Like a lot of photographers, I spend a fair amount of time in image editing software. The software of choice for me for many years has been Adobe Lightroom and Photoshop. I have tried out Capture One a few times, but Lightroom has pretty much been the one that I have stuck with. Largely, I think because I got to know it pretty well and it did everything that I needed to do. A couple of months ago, DxO Labs reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in trying out their PhotoLab 9 software and the Film Pack software. So for the last 2 months, I have pretty much been using PhotoLab 9 as my main editing software for all of my raw files, for all of my shoots. In this video here, I thought I would kind of give my initial thoughts, my first impressions of using the software, kind of show some things that I like and things that maybe are a little bit different than what I'm used to. So this is the photo library view, one of the two main views in PhotoLab 9. And this is where you organize your pictures and get an overview of what's going on in your photo library. And I use that word lightly because it actually is linked directly to the file system on your drives or where you're pointing the software. And it's a little different of a mindset to how I was used to working in Lightroom, where you're creating catalogs and linking files into the library or even bringing them into the library. And, a little bit more of a controlled system in Lightroom. I actually have found that I quite like this system. And what it is on the left here, you can see it's really just my hard drive on my MacBook Air that I'm using here as my main computer. And I can literally just point the software to a folder and it just looks in the folder and renders images based off of that. So it's not a dedicated library. It's just linking to the folder structure that you have on your drive. And I like that. I think it's nice to have one system on my computer that I can manage manually, even if I'm not in the software, and it just works the same way, in the editing software. You may or may not like that. I find that works for me. It's pretty easy. And, for example, here I'm looking at this test folder that I set up just for this video. I got a couple of subfolders inside of there so I can see general and Nikon are kind of listed there. And if I look at my hard drive and go into my pictures folder, you'll see that those, are set up exactly the same way. So it just links to those files. And what's going on is it creates, linked files in the folder as well that, basically contain all the instructions for what's going on to the image. Sidecar files. So, it's a very clean kind of system. And if you're, not fond of looking at your folder that way when you're looking, at the desktop, it's pretty easy. You can sort by kind and, it'll just separate them out. So you can see all of your original raw files, in my case here, Nikon files, and all of the sidecar files. So realistically, if you deleted all these files, all your edits would be gone. Pretty straightforward system. The photo library view. So on the left here, we've got our folder structure. In the middle, typical, just like Lightroom, thumbnails of the images. You can resize these if you want to make them larger or smaller. Pretty easy to do. And there is a split screen up here, which is nice, where you can drag that down. And if you have an image selected, it will give you a larger preview. You can make that pretty large if you want. So depending on how you like to work. I find that I don't use that drop-down view. I just hide it because I can see the images here, and I'm not editing the image in this view. So for me, I don't really find it's necessary to see that, but some people might like that. On the right here, we have a histogram, which is nice to see, and metadata about the image, and some keywords where you can get in and start to assign keywords, very much like Lightroom. So you can catalog your images or, assign things to them if you'd like to do that. When you want to actually get in and make some adjustments to the image, I'll pick this first image here. You can either double click it or you can click on the customize icon on the top left here, and it takes you into the edit view. And what we're looking at here, if you caught it, there was a little pop-up on the right side here, which was it rendering the image. It doesn't seem to, create sidecar JPEG files or anything like that. It seems to be rendering it pretty much in real time as you make adjustments. And that's got its plus and minuses. It might slow things down a little bit as it does that, depending on the speed of your computer. But it also is giving you kind of an updated view all the time as to what's going on, which is a good thing. This is the standard layout. On the left, we've got some palettes over here for dealing with our edit history, different projects, an overview, another histogram, a place where you can edit some presets. And on the right here, we've got our tool palettes of, basic editing tools. And what we're looking at here is the default layout that comes when you first started, or what they call a workspace. This is the standard workspace where, you can see kind of a collection of tools, your basic editing tools that you might need. And then right above here, we've got some selections of different groups of tools. So, this one here deals with the tools that have to do with light. Everything changes here to get you to your tools. You have another one here, which is for color tools. A lot of really nice looking tools. Everything seems very clear and easy to get to. A few other collections here, which are nice. If you click off of it, it goes back to the basic editing tools. One that I find that I really do like up top here, you can search for tools, which is nice. You can look for favorites because you can favorite tools. There's little stars here next to the each one of the little subtools where you can favorite ones and get to them easy or show only the favorites. One that I find that I like quite a lot is this right tool here, which is to show only active corrections. So if I click that, it will look at the image and see, okay, which tools have been used in this edit. So everything else that I'm not using, hide, and show me the pretty fairly long list here of all the tools that are currently being used. That all being said, I tend to like to create my own palette, which is something I did like a lot about Capture One. So you can actually customize these. These are all draggable. You can remove them. You can do all kinds of things with them. You can pop them out if you'd like to, rearrange them. And what I did is create my own workspace. So if I go to my workspace here, I don't use the palette on the left here. I wanted more space, especially when I'm on the laptop screen itself. Right now, this is a 4K monitor that is connected to the MacBook. It's a very simplified palette. Everything's compressed, and it does fit better on the laptop screen, as I said. And as I go through the tools, I kind of put them in an order that makes sense to how I usually go through the mindset of me editing my images. So I can go through each one and just open and close it just by clicking on it, make the adjustments that I need, and go back, and close it. So how do I find the software so far? It works really well. It's been very stable. I've had no crashes or no errors or nothing unusual happening. The program is very responsive. It zooms in and out pretty quickly, switches between images. I'm using my left and right arrow keys here. So it switches to the images pretty quickly. You will see that rendering happen. So I'm going to hit the key now. It switches to the image right away. You get kind of the raw view, and then it kind of renders the corrected view pretty quickly. So let's go back for a second to the photo library. So let's say I wanted to look at, this is a fun image here that I like. It has a lot of character. You can see how kind of pale and washed out the raw images, and it renders, and it gets back some of that deeper tone and contrast and saturation. That's one thing that I think I do like about PhotoLab 9 as well, is that it seems to be doing a little bit more to the image by default. I've noticed that I've probably put 20 jobs through this software in the last few months as far as actual shoots, and it's I'd say made the photos a little bit more finished than I would have had in Lightroom. Lightroom, I would have to do a little bit more adjusting and tweaking, whereas I find that PhotoLab seems to take me a little bit more along the process. And from looking at, this image here, the blue here shows that these modules are active, or these tools are active. You can, turn each one of them on or off. And these are all the ones that are on by default. So it's doing, it's looking at color rendering, it's adjusting exposure and white balance, contrast, on and on. It's doing all of these things. I think crop, maybe not. I think that's one that I've turned on, but it is doing a lot more, and I find that the images tend to be a lot more pleasing right off the hop, especially zoomed out. Once you start, zooming into 1 and 200%, and getting that kind of thing, at a micro pixel level, you can start to see some differences in how things render. There's character to the software for sure, and that's individual, individual to your choice. So, for example, if I zoom into this area here, 100%. The focus of the image is, obviously right in this area right about here. And, you can, work with contrast here, for example, and, bring that image from a pretty, washed out to a very deep, rich image pretty easily in this software. I do find that the tools are very creative and artistic. They're not what I would call mathematical or mechanical tools, where maybe the algorithms that are running behind and the rendering that's running behind is doing a nice job of what I would say keeping things creative looking. They're looking very pleasing to my eye. Like, even though I've cranked the saturate or the contrast up here like 42, at least on my screen, I don't know if this is going to come across on video, but on my screen, it's very pleasing. It has a very kind of warm, natural look. It doesn't look pixelated. It doesn't look pushed, or overdone in any way. It does have a lot of just kind of warmth and depth to it, and, dare I say, three-dimensionality to it. So I find the tools to be very nice. And again, it's nice that I can just, if I want to see the image without the contrast, I can just switch that module off, or that tool off, and very easily start to see what's going on with the image. So, I could very easily turn these all off, for example, and, start to see what, an unedited, or flat raw file might look like, and then bring things in individually. I will look at this guy here, one last image here, which is a real nighttime dark shot. Obviously we've got a street light here as well. So you can see that the rendering kicked in there. And, not much done here. This is pretty much, what we can do is we can look at the side by side. So, on the left, nice split view of what the original image looked like. And, I turned it over to black and white and did a little bit of a contrast boost, lowered the the blacks a little bit just to give it a little bit deeper look. Brought the highlights down just a smidge, but very, very easy to do adjustments, and very very quick, and the image looks great. So this has just been my first impressions of the software. It's by no means any kind of a deep dive into it. It's been a couple of months, no problems running through all my jobs through the software, and a couple of creative shoots, and everything looks great. I find it very easy to use, very simple. Especially now that I have set up, my own tools that I'm using, and I'm not distracted by a bunch of other tools that I don't necessarily need to get to yet. And I find that as I need that stuff, or as I want to play with them, I can add those later on. I do like that system quite a bit. So nice software. It's definitely worth trying out. I think it's got a nice look to it, a nice feel to it. And I'm definitely going to be spending more time getting to learn it. And later down the road, I'll do a more detailed dive into what I think of the software. But, thanks to DxO Labs for sending it over. I appreciate that very much. Recommended from what I've seen so far. Check it out. I think Adobe doesn't have to be the only game in town. That's for sure. There's some really nice alternatives out there. If you're not into the subscription model, you can buy this software outright and own it, and you're good to go, which is a nice thing as well. So thanks for watching, and thanks for listening. My name is Mike Kovalev, and I'll see you in the next video.